The whole world has been frozen in ice. The roads, houses, and everyone outside have turned to stone. However, there are still thousands of people alive and they are stuck on a moving train. This special train has been running for 17 years because if it stops once, everyone will die. However, the meaning of living on this train is not the same for everyone. Some wake up every morning and eat good food. Others have survived for so many years by eating only a black protein bar. But one day a disaster occurs on the train that turns the whole world upside down. What exactly happened that day? We have to go back 17 years to today. At this time, the temperature of the Earth suddenly started to increase to a dangerous level. As a result, a few scientists conducted a special experiment to deal with the situation. That experiment was called CW7, which was basically an attempt to cool the whole world by releasing a special chemical into the atmosphere. But such a mistake was made in that experiment that instead of decreasing the temperature of the whole world, it went to minus. As a result, the whole world looked like people started dying wherever they were on the streets, in their homes. Then, when the entire human civilization collapsed, only a few people survived. They were given shelter in a special train of Will Ford Industries. This train is not an ordinary vehicle, because inside it there are schools, hospitals, plants, food, everything. In short, there is a small world inside this train. The train keeps going around the whole world continuously because once it stops, the engine will stop, and if the engine stops, everyone will grow up and die. That's why this train, which has been running for so many years, has not stopped for a second. But inside this train, a system similar to our society is going on. The front compartments are for the rich. There is no lack of luxury there, and the back compartments are for the poor. Seeing their condition will make you shiver. They don't even get to eat properly 3 times a day, nor do they have any special facilities, and there is no question of going to the front compartment, because a special security ensures that these poor people are given only one thing to survive: a black protein bar, which is their only food for years. Regularly, 2 guards come to the compartment of these poor people. They count the people and hand them 1 protein bar and leave. However, when the guards leave, 2 people named Curtis and Edgar keep checking everyone's bars like crazy. Actually, every day a small capsule is hidden inside one of the bars, and inside that capsule is a secret message. They don't know who is sending this message or why. However, each message brings new information little by little that keeps their hope of survival alive. Just like that, today's capsule is found by the team of this girl named Tanya's child. Inside this capsule, today, 3 letters are found. Seeing this, Curtis immediately runs to Gilliam. Gilliam is the official leader of this poor compartment who has no arm, and there is a history behind the absence of that arm that will break your heart with pain if you know it later. Anyway, Gilliam and Curtis together realize that this NM is actually the first 3 letters of a name, the full meaning of which is Namgun Minsun. But do you know what the scariest thing is? This Minsun is not a man. He is the main designer of the security system. That means he has built the security system for every door of the train himself, but now he is stuck in the train jail. Now the car realizes that this Minsun has been sending them messages for so long and might want to help them. Right then, Curtis makes a master plan. He sees that every day when the guards come to give them good food, the train doors open for exactly 4 seconds. So now he has to use this 4-second gap, because if he can get Minsun out of jail, he will be able to reach their engine room straight away, and the only purpose of going to the engine room is to kill the owner of this train named Will Ford, because this inhuman torture is being done on his orders on the poor people. Curtis also makes a special tool for this plan, a thick iron rod that if stuck in the door gap, the automatic doors will not be able to break it anymore. Thus, they proceed according to that plan, but before the rebellion starts, an incident happens that lights a fire in the minds of the entire compartment. One day, some guards come and start counting the little children in the back compartment, just like the cows are counted on a cattle farm. When the count is over, they forcefully take the babies away. Here, a female officer directly drags away Tanya's son Tim and Andrew's son Auntie. Seeing her child snatched away in front of her eyes, Tanya screams and cries. Tanya falls at their feet and begs them to let her baby go, but the woman mercilessly takes them away. But at that moment, Andrew loses his patience. In anger, he throws a shoe at the woman, which hits the woman directly in the head. The entire compartment immediately went silent at this scene. No one could say anything because speaking against this train meant embracing death. But by then, the train authorities came and caught Andrew and then gave him a punishment that even when I tried to describe it, it was cold. The hand that Andrew had quickly thrown out was now taken out through a small hole in the train wall. Outside, the temperature was extremely minus, as a result of which his hand froze like a stone in just a few seconds. Unable to bear the pain of this terrible punishment, Andrew screamed out loud, but this punishment was not over for him. Then they brought a huge hammer and hit that hand with a force. As a result, the fresh hand instantly turned into glass. Think about it, have you ever seen such a punishment? Seeing this terrible punishment, everyone in the bogie understands what the real consequences of speaking out against them can be, but today something else happens. A man named Victor gives them a sketch of Tanya and Andrew's missing children so that at least they can calm down by looking at the picture. Tanya holds the picture to her chest and cries, and Andrew looks at the picture even with the pain of his broken hand. This one scene changes the mindset of everyone in the whole bogie, because they all understand that they cannot let this continue for the rest of their lives. And from here, a new journey begins. Time passes, and one day Curtis notices a good thing. He sees a guard telling another to throw this unemployed friend away. Hearing this, Curtis has a suspicion. He immediately shares that suspicion with Gilliam. Actually, Curtis thinks that there are no real bullets in those guns, because when the poor people revolted 4 years ago, the guards had used up all the bullets, and now they are just using fake guns to scare them. Now, after hearing such logic, Gilliam wants to know how he can be so sure, because if this logic is wrong, then their death is inevitable. However, Curtis pauses and says that if he is wrong, he might die. But if we want to live, we have to take risks. Thus, the next day, when the guards come to give them their protein bird, everyone in the bogey bows their heads as usual. But this time, Curtis does not bow his head. He goes right in front and stands facing the guards. Then, looking them in the eyes, he slowly puts the guard's gun to his forehead. Then, before the guard realizes anything, Curtis pulls the trigger. Finally, his words come true. Since there are no real bullets in these guns, no firing occurs, and this incident changes the history of the entire bogey. Now, as soon as the silence of the entire compartment ended, everyone's silence was broken. The anger, humiliation, and pain accumulated over 17 years came out at once. Everyone jumped on the guards together. He blocked the gap in the door with the iron tool that Curtis had made. And in this way, passing through compartment after compartment, they reached the train prison. This rebellion was the beginning of their liberation. But no one was prepared for what awaited them. The prison they had reached by now was no ordinary prison, because here people were kept unconscious in iron boxes, and those boxes were arranged in rows on the walls. It looked like a human warehouse. In this way, they open a box and take out Minson, but Minson is still unconscious. Seeing this, Curtis then holds a substance called chronal near her nose. It is a type of drug that makes people's senses return in the morning. As a result, Minsun opens her eyes and slowly looks out within a few seconds. Then Curtis directly asks if you are Namgun Minsun. When Minsun answers, Curtis tells him the whole plan. He also gives a condition that in exchange for each door opened, he will be given a chronodusk. However, if this is not done, he will be sent back to the box. Hearing all this, Minsun agrees. However, he also gives a condition. He says that his daughter Wana must also be taken with them. Now, according to that condition, his daughter Wana is also taken out another box. Actually, Wana has been on this train since birth. That means she has never seen the light of this world. She has spent her entire life inside this metal wall. She also has a strange power. He can tell what's inside by standing outside any closed door. So before Minsun opens the first door, Wana closes her eyes and stands for a few seconds. Then she tells him that this compartment is completely empty. They are in no danger. And after receiving this confirmation, Minsun opens the door. In this way, passing through one compartment after another, they reach a compartment that is completely closed. Curtis then goes to a compartment and slowly opens it. Then an incredible thing happens. For the first time in 17 years, sunlight falls on his face. The light is so bright that Curtis immediately covers his eyes, because his eyes have lost their habit of light after being in the dark compartment for so many years. Then the others also come to the compartment one by one. After everyone's eyes adjust a little, they see that the world is still covered in ice. But remember, there is a truth hidden in the next compartment that will make your blood run cold, if you know it. And only after knowing that truth will you understand how deep the darkness is that this train is actually running in. In the meantime, those who have not subscribed to the channel yet, quickly subscribe to get more explosive movie explanations. Anyway, in the next compartment, Curtis sees a man named Paul working in front of a large machine. Paul once lived in the poor compartment. However, a strange smell is coming from this room. Then Curtis goes closer and wants to see what Paul is actually making, and seeing this thing, the ground moves away from under his feet. Various types of insects, cockroaches, and pests are being poured together into a huge machine and crushed, and the mixture is being pressed to make their only food, protein bars. Brother, after knowing this, he was feeling like vomiting again. Seeing all this, Curtis, trembling with anger, grabbed Paul and asked him how he could knowingly feed these things to people every day, but Paul then calmly said that you have been eating these things without knowing it for so long, but I used to eat them knowingly every day, so think about which is more painful. Hearing this, Curtis's anger cooled down completely, because he realized that Paul actually had no choice. Curtis then made Paul promise that no one else in the group would know this truth, because if anyone found out, they would die of starvation. Just then, Curtis's eyes fell on a capsule lying on the ground. It was the same type of capsule that they used to get every day to increase their protein. Then Paul told him that he collects the same type of capsule on the ground every day. And with that, he would send them messages hidden inside the bar. Now, when he opened the cartridge capsule, he saw that it had water written on it. And after seeing this message, he realized that their next target might be the water supply compartment. That means that if they could capture it, a large part of the entire train's power would come to them. In the meantime, as Minsu opened the front door, Wana held his hand and stopped him. He shouted, "Dad, don't open this door because there are many people behind this door." But by that time, Minsu's hand reached the door handle and it opened. Everyone was stunned to see what was in front of him because there were rows of people wearing masks in the entire compartment, with sharp axes and various weapons in their hands. These people were Wilford's special forces. In fact, Wilford knew that Curtis would come this way one day or another, so he had already made this arrangement. Then a fierce fight began. No guns, only hand-to-hand combat and sharp weapons. Curtis's group was advancing, but Wilford's people were not letting up. At one point in this fighting, Wilford's assistant Mason arrived there. Mason told everyone that Wilford has saved you all this time. He gave you a place on this train, and today you are rebelling against him. This is what you are doing ungratefully. So from today onwards, none of you will be saved. As soon as this was over, all the guards put on their night vision goggles, because they knew that a huge dark tunnel was coming ahead, and as soon as the train entered this tunnel, the entire compartment would go completely dark. Then they would attack everyone according to the plan. As soon as the train ran through the tunnel, all the guards came and started hitting each other. Curtis's group could not see anything. They were just beating each other. Hearing the voice of one, the other could understand who was where. But if the enemy could not be seen, how could they fight? At that moment, Curtis shouted with all his might to light the torches, and immediately one torch after another lit up. In that orange light, everything suddenly became clear, and that's why the night vision goggles of the guards' eyes suddenly stopped for a moment. Then, at that moment, Curtis' team started a counterattack. This time the fight was even. Even Wilford's special forces could not stand the stubbornness and anger of Curtis's team. At one point the guards were forced to admit defeat, but with this victory came a huge loss. At one point in the fight, Edgar was in danger. Curtis rushed to save him, but by then it was too late. Edgar died in that compartment. Curtis kept the pain of losing his childhood friend like a stone in his chest, because there was no time to cry anymore. They still had a long way to go. Then everyone surrounded Mason and imprisoned him. Tanya and Andrew madly asked Mason about his children. Then Mason said that he knew nothing and left him alone. But there, Curtis made a condition that he had to be taken straight to Wilford. Only then would they let him go. Mason had no other way to save his life this time, so he agreed. Meanwhile, Mason continued to lead them forward, and as they passed one compartment after another, Curtis's group saw something strange. They saw how two completely different worlds had existed side by side for so long. In one compartment there was a whole garden, green plants, colorful flowers, and even a small pond where fish were swimming. The people of this poor bog had never seen a tree in their life, nor had they smelled a flower, and now, seeing it in front of them, they stopped. Some even reached out and touched a leaf as if they couldn't believe it was real. Going into another compartment, they saw a 5-star restaurant. Famous expensive food was served on the table: steak, love stars, fresh fruits, everything. After 17 years, the people could no longer contain themselves when they saw good food for the first time. So they jumped straight into the food. Unable to control Mason's greed, he sat down on a chair. But Curtis stopped his hand. Then he took out the black protein bar from his pocket and handed it to him, and said, "Eat this now, because you've been feeding us this for so many years." Seeing this, Mason twisted his face in disgust, but looking into Curtis's eyes, he realized that there was no chance of saying no here. So for the first time, he was forced to swallow the insect-filled protein bar. Then, in the compartment ahead, a beautiful school was seen. This school was only for rich children. A teacher named Allison was taking classes at that time. At this time, Tanya and Andrew were anxious to find their children and started asking everyone. But just then, Anne brought a trolley full of eggs for the children. Curtis was also given an egg. But when he picked it up, he felt that there was something inside it. This time, he saw the exact same capsule inside, and this capsule had blood written on it. But before Curtis could understand anything, Wilford's men pulled out real guns from behind the curtain and started shooting. In an instant, the entire compartment was in a state of chaos. People were lying on the floor, some were trying to hide. Andrew was frantically searching for his son Andy, and at that moment a bullet hit him in the chest. Andrew fell to the floor before he could find his son. Meanwhile, Curtis and his team, blinded by anger, finished off Wilford's men one by one. Then a video appeared on the classroom TV. Wilford's men brutally killed Gilliam. Seeing this scene, Curtis could no longer control himself, and at that moment he finished off Mason, who was captured by them. But from then on, the road became more difficult. Wilford's men continued to attack again and again, and in each attack, Curtis's team members died one by one. Tanya was also seriously injured in one attack, and she was shot in the stomach. As a result, he realizes that it will not be possible to stand up again this time. Tanya lies on the floor and pulls Curtis's hand. In a weak voice, she says, "Promise me, you will save my son no matter what." Curtis holds Tanya's hand tightly, and she promises her. Right after that, Tanya closes her eyes and leaves the world. After this incident, only Curtis, Minsu, and Juana are left. The three of them move towards the engine room. Finally, they reach the door. Just as Curtis is about to break down the door, Minsu stops him. Then Curtis tells Minsu the terrible history that he has never told anyone before. This time he says that exactly 17 years ago, when they were picked up on this train, they were not given any food for the first month. Thousands of people were crammed into a small compartment and were slowly going crazy from hunger. In the first week, people survived by drinking water. In the second week, their water supply also decreased. And in the third week, people started dying. Seeing no way to survive, they started killing and eating the weakest people in their group. First the old people, then the sick, and then they started eating the children. Curtis lowered his head as he spoke because he got wet after hearing this Quran story. Because today he lost Edgar, Curtis said that he wanted to finish Wilford for this, so that his door would be opened. However, Minsu then said something that Curtis did not expect at all. Minsun says that he has been observing the temperature data outside the train for a long time. He can now see that the temperature has gradually increased. The ice on the mountains has started to melt. This means that people may now be able to live outside if they want. And then Minsun takes out a bunch of chronal from inside his shirt. He says that these are not drugs, rather he will use them to make an explosive and blow up the entire front compartment of the train. And if he can do this, this train will stop forever. But the question is, will Curtis kill Wilford, or will he stop the train? And if the train stops, will people still be able to survive outside? The answer to this question is coming in the next few minutes. And since you have been watching the movie for so long, you must be enjoying it. So if you liked it, be sure to like it. Anyway, at that very moment, the woman who took their children appears. Without saying a word, he shoots Minsun directly, and Minsun falls to the ground after being shot. Then, looking at the car, he calmly tells her that Will Ford is waiting for you. After this incident, Curtis' gun was limited, so the plan was to let the poor rebel. As a result, they would be killed one by one to control the population of this train. That means it was a cruel but calculated system. However, Curtis now lets their plan go awry by lighting the torch, and also most of Will Ford's guards die, so as punishment, he kills Gilliam. After knowing all this, Will Ford makes Curtis an offer. He says that he is old, so Curtis is now responsible for this train, and Curtis should control these people. Curtis stops for a moment because he did not expect this offer at all. Meanwhile, Juana is trying to make a path on the floor of the engine room to explode. Wilford's people come forward to stop Juana. However, Juana takes care of them a little. He lifts the top part of the table with all his strength, and when he lifts it up, everyone in the room is shocked because a small hand comes out from under it. A little boy is sitting and working in this engine room. However, there is no fear or panic in this boy's eyes because this is their job, and this child was no one but Tanya's son Tim. Seeing Tim, Curtis's calculations came together. He now understood why the children were measured. In fact, these small children were used to get them into this narrow space. Then Wilford shamelessly explained that there were some parts of the engine. There is no remorse or shame in him. Hearing these words, Curtis does not say anything else. He just goes down to the maze and reaches out to Tim. However, getting Tim out is not easy at all, because the place is so deep that Curtis's entire hand cannot fit in. Even then, he keeps trying and goes to get him out. However, at that moment, a sharp part of the engine enters his hand, and his hand is cut off by this part, just like how Gilliam's hand was cut off. But after all this, Curtis does not stop. He finally lifts Tim up, and this scene erases Curtis's last-minute hesitation towards Wilford forever. At that moment, Juana gets the opportunity to put the chronals together and set them on fire. Curtis grabs the three and moves away, and a huge explosion completely destroys the engine room, as a result of which the train becomes useless in an instant and crashes to a stop after 17 years. In the finale, Will Ford is finished with this explosion, but here we can see that Curtis and Minsu are also killed in this explosion. However, Tim can be saved, because Curtis promised Tanya that he would save Tim even if he had to give his will also be able to survive in this world. This amazing movie Snowpiercer ends right here, right in this scene.